She called me her rock until I crumbled. And she vanished. For a decade. I handed over every spare dollar, every weekend, every ounce of stability I had, just to make sure my little sister didn't drown. I paid off her credit cards, co-signed her car loan, even sold my truck so her son could get braces. She cried. I showed up. She needed. I gave, and I told myself it was love. But when I got laid off, when I needed a place to stay just for a few weeks, she didn't even answer the door. She texted me instead, said I was becoming a burden. I stood there, bags in hand, heart thudding like a stranger's, and realized something colder than betrayal. I never really had a sister. I always thought family meant forever until I found myself sleeping in my car outside a strip mall, with $3 in my pocket and a voicemail from my sister saying, "Don't guilt trip me. It wasn't always like that." Back when I still had a job, a steady paycheck, and a one-bedroom apartment I could actually afford. I used to think I was lucky. Sure, I didn't have much of a social life. Most of my weekends were spent babysitting my nephew or helping Lisa juggle bills. But I figured that's what older brothers were for, especially when you grow up the way we did, watching our mom chase bottle caps more than birthdays, and our dad disappear before we learned how to spell his name. Lisa was the baby. Sweet, wide-eyed, all dimples and messes. She clung to me like I was her gravity, and I clung right back because I didn't know how not to. I was 18 and scared, and she was 12 and smaller than she should have been. That first year, I skipped college, picked up a job at the tire shop, and took over everything: her school forms, her dinners, her curfews. And when she got older, I still showed up. When she got pregnant at 19, I was the first one she called. She cried and said, "Please don't leave me like everyone else did." So I moved some things around, got a second job stocking shelves at night. I helped with doctor visits, bought baby clothes. I even paid half the hospital bill because her boyfriend ghosted the second he heard the word ultrasound. People used to call me selfless, said I was such a good guy. But here's the thing. No one tells you about being the dependable one. Once people learn, you'll carry the weight. They stop helping you lift it. Over the years, Lisa leaned on me for everything: rent when she was short, groceries when she couldn't stretch her SNAP benefits, gas money, daycare fees. Even that time she overdrew her account and needed someone to cover her Netflix subscription so the baby wouldn't cry. I didn't ask for payback. I didn't keep score. I just kept giving. I wasn't rich by any means. I worked hard. But my life stayed simple. A modest apartment, takeout on Fridays, and maybe a baseball game on TV if I wasn't passed out from overtime. Lisa said I was boring. I said I was stable. And then, after 10 years of pouring everything I had into her survival, the tire shop shut down. Corporate downsizing. One minute I had seniority. The next I had a cardboard box and a handshake. It hit me hard. I didn't have much in savings. I'd spent most of my 30s helping Lisa chase emergencies. And now I had one of my own. I called her that night, just to talk, to say, "I'm scared." She didn't answer. The next day, I texted and asked if I could crash at her place for a couple of weeks just until I found something new. Her reply came 6 hours later. "Sorry. Too much going on. Not a good time. No explanation. No follow-up. Just that, at first." I thought she was joking. I even chuckled to myself, staring at the screen like she'd text again any second with, "Of course. Dummy. Come over." She didn't. I tried calling. She didn't pick up, so I drove to her place. I hadn't told anyone how bad it had gotten, how I'd maxed out my last credit card buying groceries, or how I'd pawned my TV just to keep the lights on another week. I thought she'd open the door, hug me, and say, "You took care of me. Let me return the favor." But she didn't even come to the door. I saw her peek through the curtain. Then I got the text. "This isn't fair to me and Mason. Please respect my space." That's when it hit me. 10 years of sacrifices. 10 years of being the fallback plan. The free babysitter. the emergency fund. And the second I needed her, I wasn't family anymore, just a problem she didn't want to deal with. And the worst part, I still stood on that porch for 5 full minutes, just in case she changed her mind. She didn't. It's strange how fast your world can shrink. One day, you've got a place to hang your coat, a coffee maker that greets you like an old friend, a spot on the couch you call your own, and the next, you're parking behind a discount store at midnight, praying no one notices the condensation on your windows while you try to sleep curled around a backpack full of rejection letters. I didn't tell anyone else, not our cousins, not the guys from the shop, not even Aunt June, who used to send me birthday cards with wrinkled $5 bills inside. I was embarrassed, ashamed, really, not just because I'd fallen, but because I'd fallen after doing everything right. I worked hard. I gave generously. I never asked for more than I needed. And still, there I was, eating crackers for dinner and brushing my teeth in a gas station bathroom. Lisa didn't reach out once. Not after I left her porch, not after I stopped trying to call, and definitely not after I pawned the last piece of jewelry our mom left behind to pay for a motel room during a snowstorm. Funny, isn't it? How the people who cry the loudest about loyalty are the first ones to vanish when you're not useful anymore. A week after I lost my job, I found temporary work doing deliveries for a catering company. It wasn't much, $11 an hour. Under the table, long hours, no benefits. But it was something. I saved every dollar I could, skipped every meal I could stomach skipping, and put gas in the car like it was holy water. I knew I couldn't survive like that for long. Then one night, something shifted. I was delivering trays to a wedding venue on the north end of town, fancy place. All crystal chandeliers and linen napkins folded like swans. I was tired, sweaty, and late. As I pushed the food cart down a side hallway, I caught a glimpse of the reception through the doors. And there she was, Lisa, my sister, wearing a velvet green dress, laughing at some joke. A champagne glass in one hand and a diamond tennis bracelet sparkling on her wrist, the same one I'd helped her pick out last Christmas when she said she couldn't afford anything nice. At first, I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was someone else. But then Mason, her son, came barreling toward the dessert table, knocking over a vase in the process. Lisa didn't even flinch. She just smiled, snapped her fingers, and someone else cleaned it up. I don't know what I expected in that moment. Shock rage. Instead, all I felt was hollow, like I'd just walked into the scene of a play I didn't audition for, like I'd been erased. The worst part? She saw me. Her eyes met mine across the crowded room, just for a second. And I know she recognized me. Her face tightened, like a reflex. But she didn't wave. She didn't smile. She turned away, said something to a friend, and kept dancing. I finished the delivery in silence, clocked out, sat in my car for an hour, staring at the steering wheel, wondering how many years I'd wasted waiting for someone like that to love me the way I loved her. I never asked for much. A couch, a blanket, a little dignity. Instead, I got ghosted by the person I'd held up through every storm she refused to stand in herself. The next day, I called Aunt June. I hadn't spoken to her in years. Not really, but she picked up after 2 rings. Like no time had passed at all. And when I said, "I'm not okay," she didn't ask why. She just said, "Come home." And for the first time in weeks, I cried. Not because I was weak, but because someone finally said, "You matter," without needing me to prove it first. Aunt June lived in a weather-worn bungalow tucked between 2 retired farms just outside of Huron, Ohio. It had creaky floorboards, a crooked mailbox, and smelled faintly of lemon oil and old stories. But the second I stepped across the threshold, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safe. She didn't ask for explanations. She didn't ask what Lisa had done or how I ended up half-starved and sleeping in a parking lot. She just handed me a folded towel, pointed toward the guest room, and said, "Sheets are clean. Bathrooms to your left. You're staying as long as you need. So don't argue." I slept for 14 hours that first night, straight through breakfast and lunch. When I finally came into the kitchen, blinking and sore, Aunt June slid a plate of French toast across the table like she'd just been waiting. There was no grand epiphany, no dramatic tears or breakdowns, just slow mornings, warm coffee, and silence that didn't feel heavy. She let me be quiet, let me be broken, and piece by piece, I started to feel human again. I picked up odd jobs around town, fixing fences, mowing lawns, painting sheds. Word spread that June's nephew had good hands and showed up on time. That was all most people needed to hear. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and every dollar I earned felt like another brick under my feet. Then one afternoon, while replacing porch slats for an older couple, I got a message from an unknown number. It was Lisa. "Can we talk?" Just 3 words. No punctuation, no apology, no acknowledgement of everything that had passed between us. I stared at the message for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen. Not to reply, but to delete it. But I didn't. Not yet. Something told me the storm hadn't passed. It had only gone quiet. Later that week, Aunt June found me scrubbing rust off her garden tools in the shed. She texted. I said, not even looking up. She didn't ask who. She already knew. "Are you going to respond?" "No." I said, "Good." She replied, as simply as she would have said the tea's done steeping. But the next message came 2 days later. This time, it was a photo. Me and Lisa probably 15 years ago, sitting on the curb outside our childhood home, eating popsicles. She captioned it, "We used to be so close." That was when I realized something important. She didn't miss me. She missed what I used to do for her. Lisa hadn't changed, but I had. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want an apology dragged from her teeth just so I could pretend things were fine. I wanted something I had never dared to ask for before. Peace. Aunt June handed me an old tin box later that night. Inside were clippings from local newspapers, notes scribbled in my mom's handwriting, and a yellowed envelope addressed to me. She'd found it cleaning out her closet. It was from my mother. I hadn't seen her handwriting in over a decade. My hands shook as I opened it. It wasn't long, just a page or so. She must have written it while she was sick. The last line said, "I don't know what the world will take from you, but never let it take your kindness. And if someone forgets your worth, walk away. That's how you teach them to remember." I read it twice, then again, and somewhere between the second and third time, something inside me settled. I didn't need Lisa to remember who I was. I remembered, and that was enough. It was late spring when Lisa finally crossed the line. Aunt June and I were finishing a raised garden bed behind the house, our hands caked in dirt and laughter still hanging in the air. When her neighbor Marlene came shuffling across the yard, she was clutching a manila envelope like it burned her fingers. "You might want to see this," she said, frowning. It came to my place by mistake. The envelope had my name on it, my full name first, middle, last, no return address, but I didn't need one to know exactly who it was from. My chest tightened as I peeled it open. Inside was a typed letter from Lisa's new attorney. Apparently, she was filing a claim against me for restitution of emotional damages and financial expectation. She listed every dime she claimed she ever loaned me: rent, food, missed work days, and even a personal companionship stipend for what she described as a decade of emotional labor. She wanted $42,000. $1,000? $42,000. Aunt June read the letter twice, slower the second time, her eyes narrowing with each word. "She's unhinged," I whispered. "No," she said calmly. "She's panicking. You've never not answered before." Lisa had never lost control of me. Until now. This wasn't about money. It was about power. She thought legal threats would scare me back into place. But that was the old me, the version who kept quiet to keep the peace, who handed over his paycheck and said thank you when she tossed him leftovers. I took a long walk that evening, just me and the wind and the sound of distant lawnmowers. I thought about everything I'd let happen, everything I'd excused, my childhood of getting pushed aside, the birthdays skipped because Lisa had cheer practice, the way she told every boyfriend I wasn't normal and needed a lot of help. She used my silence as a blank check, and now she wanted to cash it in. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight her with threats or noise. I was going to finish what I started. The next morning, I drove to the courthouse in Norwalk and filed for a protective order, not because I thought she'd hurt me, but because I needed the paper trail. Then I met with a legal aid volunteer Aunt June knew from church, a man named Mr. Darnell, with crooked glasses and a courtroom voice that could cut glass. He didn't charge me a penny, just read Lisa's letter, smiled grimly, and said, "We'll take care of it." 2 days later, I got a message. It wasn't from Lisa, it was from her boyfriend, Ben. He said he didn't know what was going on, but Lisa had told him I was a danger to her and myself, that I was mentally unstable, that she had proof. I asked him if he wanted the truth. He didn't answer. But the next week, he broke up with her, and a week after that, Lisa lost her job. Apparently, she'd used company resources to track me down, sent several emails from her work address to dig up my whereabouts. Her employer found out. They didn't appreciate it. She sent one final message. "You ruined my life." I stared at it for a long while. Then I blocked the number, not in anger, in peace, because for the first time in 10 years, she couldn't touch me. And I had no intention of ever letting her close again. That night, Aunt June made spaghetti and played her old Fleetwood Mac records on the living room stereo. We sat on the porch and watched the sun settle over the fields, cicadas humming like background music. "You know what I think," she said, sipping her tea? "What I think your mama would be proud of you, not for fighting, but for knowing when to stop bleeding for people who never brought you a bandage." I swallowed hard. The air was thick and soft and kind. "She'd be proud of you too," I said. Aunt June didn't answer. She just reached over and squeezed my hand, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt like someone worth holding on to. Summer melted into early fall, and with it came a quiet I hadn't known I craved. It wasn't just about not hearing from Lisa anymore. It was about not hearing myself apologize every day just for existing. I found a job at the local hardware store, part-time, but enough to cover my half of groceries and chip in for bills. The work was honest, steady. I got to use my hands again, fixing things, building shelves, helping retired farmers find the right bolts for their tractors. I even started keeping a small toolbox of my own, something just mine. Aunt June noticed. She always did. "You've stopped flinching," she said one afternoon, handing me a glass of sweet tea. Took a while. I smiled. I didn't know I was that fall. I got a letter from my cousin, Maggie Lisa's younger sister. We hadn't spoken in years. Not really. She was always quiet at family gatherings, floating on the edge of Lisa's spotlight. Her handwriting was small and careful. She wrote, "I saw what happened. I just want you to know you're not crazy. You're brave. I wish I'd said something sooner." There was a Polaroid inside the envelope. It was from a birthday party, probably when I was 9 or 10. I was blowing out candles, and Lisa was in the corner, arms crossed, sulking. I stared at it for a long time. I hadn't seen that photo in 20 years. Maggie ended her note with a phone number and a single line. "If you ever want to catch up, I'd like to know who you really are." I didn't know if I was ready to reach back, but for the first time in my life, the idea didn't terrify me. That mattered. One Sunday, Aunt June and I were cleaning out the attic. Dusty boxes, old newspapers, childhood toys no one remembered buying. I found a wooden chest in the back corner. covered in paint flecks and cobwebs. Inside were things from my childhood. My mother had saved report cards, finger paintings, even a tiny pair of mittens with my initials stitched in red. And at the very bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, was a birthday card. It had my name on it. I opened it gently, afraid it might fall apart. Inside was a note in my mother's handwriting. In case your sister forgets, or life gets too loud, or you ever feel like you're not enough. Happy birthday, sweetheart. You've always been more than enough. I didn't cry, not right away. I just sat there, the attic warm and musty around me, and let those words sink in. I'd spent so much of my life begging to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be enough. But I was, even when they ignored me, even when they took, even when they left. I was enough. Later that night, I went out back and lit a small fire in the pit Aunt June had built last spring. I tossed Lisa's last letter into it, watched the edges curl and blacken. Then I added the manila envelope, the fake invoices, the printed lies, all of it, gone. The past wasn't something I could erase, but I didn't have to carry it anymore. 2 months later, I moved into a small rental of my own, just 10 minutes from Aunt June's, with creaky floors and a clawfoot tub. My name was the only one on the lease. My bills, my locks, my rules. I still visit her every Sunday. We cook, watch old movies, sometimes say nothing at all. And once, when I brought over a birthday cake with my name on it, in red icing, she smiled and said, "Took you long enough." I laughed, really laughed, because I wasn't trying to survive anymore. I was finally living. And in the quiet, in the sunlight filtering through the kitchen window, in the feel of warm cake and coffee in hand, I understood something. The people who love you for what you give will leave the moment you stop giving. But the people who love you for who you are, they stay. They build with you. They bring you your name back and hand you the matches to burn what hurt you. And this time, I didn't walk away empty. I walked away free. Some stories hit deeper as we get older because we've lived them or watched someone we love live through them. This one reminds us of a hard truth sometimes. The people we give the most to are the first to forget us when we need something back. And that kind of hurt, it doesn't just bruise the heart, it reshapes it. But healing doesn't always come with grand apologies or neat endings. Sometimes it comes in a quiet room, a kind gesture, or finally putting your own name back on the cake. For anyone who's ever been taken for granted, pushed aside, or made to feel invisible in their own family, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not wrong for walking away to protect your peace. Let's talk about it. Have you ever had to choose your sanity over someone else's comfort? Did you have an Aunt June who helped you find your voice again? We'd love to hear your story in the comments. If this story spoke to you or reminded you of someone you care about, please give it a like. Subscribe for more powerful real-life stories. And share it with someone who needs to know they're not alone. You matter. You always have.